started our day early to beat the crowds and walk to St. Peter's Basilica. The first stop, the Trevi Fountain. We did the obligatory coin toss into the fountain and took our photos whilst it was quiet, before heading to the next stop on our route, which was the Pantheon. We passed through Piazza Navona on our way to the Basilica, and the early sunlight made everything look even better. The streets were empty at this hour, which made for a pleasant walk, and the sunlight was amazing as we crossed St. Angelo's Bridge, another place that is usually bustling with people. The bridge features 10 famous angel statues and was completed in 134 AD by Emperor Hadrian to connect the city to his mausoleum, now Castel Sant'Angelo. St. Peter's Basilica is the largest church in the world. Designed principally by Donato Bramante, Michelangelo and Carlo Maderno, with piazza and fittings by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Construction started in 1506 and was completed by 1626. St. Peter's is one of the most renowned works of Italian Renaissance architecture and regarded as one of the holiest Catholic shrines. The most famous sculpture in St. Peter's Basilica is Michelangelo's Pieta. Carved from a single block of Carrara marble, it depicts the Virgin Mary mourning over the body of Jesus. St. Peter, the first Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, is interred at the Basilica, with his tomb directly below the high altar of the Basilica, also known as the Altar of the Confession. We now headed to do the dome tour, opting to take the elevator to the halfway point. Looking down from the dome, you get to see the grand scale of the building and also how small the people look. You will also notice that what looks like paintings on the wall are in fact mosaics. At this point, you can stop at the rooftop and explore the gift shop and cafe, or continue to climb the 320 steps to the top of the dome.
You have to climb daily?
Yeah, every day.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Don't know how you do it.
On the rooftop of the Basilica, you can see the statues of the 12 apostles. There is also a cafe, gift shop, and the all-important elevator to go down. As we left the Basilica, we couldn't help but notice how ornate the entrance area was. The Swiss Guards seen here protect the Pope and the Vatican. The Swiss Guard is considered an elite military unit and is highly selective in its recruitment. Candidates must be unmarried Swiss Catholic males between 19 and 30 years old and at least 5 foot 8.5 inches tall who have completed basic training with the Swiss Armed Forces and hold a professional diploma or high school degree. We managed to secure tickets and a good spot for the papal audience with Pope Leo. Today we visited the Vatican Museum. We booked our tickets with Get Your Guide with a 1:30 p.m. time slot and arrived half an hour before our time slot. Upon entering the museum, we headed to the nearby carriage pavilion, where we saw the many carriages and vehicles that have been used to transport the Pope. One of the most impressive was this horse-drawn carriage, the Grand Gala Berlin, constructed in Rome in 1826 for Pope Leo XII. The 460 Nürburg limousine seen here was designed by Ferdinand Porsche and was gifted to Pope Pius XI on November 14, 1930 by Mercedes-Benz. This Popemobile, made by Fiat, is linked to the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II's life in St. Peter's Square on May 13, 1981. This in turn led to the introduction of armoured Popemobiles. Here we can see Michael Schumacher meeting Pope John Paul II in 2005, and also Pope Benedict XVI being presented with a Ferrari Formula One steering wheel by Luca di Montezemolo. Next, we headed into the Pinecone Courtyard, a large open space named after the huge bronze pine cone in the courtyard. Also in the courtyard is the sculpture called Sphere Within a Sphere. Created between 1979 and 1980, the sculpture was donated to the Vatican Museum in 1990. The sculpture features a cracked outer shell revealing an inner broken sphere, symbolising a new world emerging from the old. The museum has many galleries of contemporary art, as well as tapestries. And here, in the 120-metre-long Gallery of Maps, there are 40 frescoed map panels of Italian regions and major ports. We followed the crowds as we made our way to the Sistine Chapel and then on to the exit. We spent a good 4 hours here as there is so much to see. As we walked through the Jewish quarter, we came across the porticus of Ottavia. The portico was built by Caecilius Metellus in the 2nd century and rebuilt by Emperor Augustus after the death of his uncle Julius Caesar. Augustus dedicated the structure to his sister Ottavia, hence the name it bears today. As we walk further along, we can see the remains of columns and the Theatre of Marcellus. The Theatre of Marcellus was an open-air theatre and can hold between 11,000 and 20,000 spectators, and was the largest and most important theatre in ancient Rome. We next made our way to the Tiber River nearby to see the remaining arch of the Pons Aemilius Bridge. The bridge is the oldest Roman stone bridge in Rome and dates from the 2nd century. In Roman times, the bridge spanned the river connecting the cattle market in the east with Trastevere in the west. With only a single arch left of the bridge, it is known by Italians as Ponte Rotto, which means broken bridge. We then headed to Piazza del Campidoglio, but stopped at this terrace for an amazing view over the rooftops of Rome. The piazza was designed by Michelangelo in the 16th century and features an equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius in the centre of the square. This statue is a replica, with the original kept in the Capitoline Museum. This bridge between the two buildings reminded me of the Bridge of Sighs in Venice as we headed to a viewpoint overlooking the Roman Forum. The views over the Roman Forum and Palatine Hill are spectacular and give a sense of the scale of the buildings and the overall area. At another nearby viewpoint, you can see the Roman Forum with Trajan's Forum and Market in the distance. We found this lovely garden nearby. With its fountain and numerous palm trees, it made for a relaxing getaway from the nearby crowds and hustle and bustle. The next day we visited the Colosseum and Roman Forum, but the weather had changed. Once we had left the arena floor, we headed up to the second tier, which has a museum exhibition showcasing artifacts and history of the Colosseum. In Roman times, this level was reserved for the knights and wealthy merchants, positioned between the senators below and the general public above. From this viewpoint, you can see the brickwork and inner arches used in the construction of the Colosseum. We have now made our way down to the first tier, which was the prestigious seating area, reserved for the emperor, senators and vestal virgins. We can also see the Hypogeum, a two-storey structure of tunnels and cages for gladiators and animals. Some of the original marble flooring and steps are still visible in some sections, such as these. We now made our way to the Roman Forum, but not before we were fully soaked by a sudden downpour. Not only do you have to contend with the uneven ground, but also attacks from random seagulls looking for an easy meal. Whoa. Oh my God. Stolen. The ruins on the right are all that remains of the Basilica Aemilia, built in 179 BC. Further ahead, the large building on the right is the Curia Julia, the Senate house of ancient Rome. The building survived the test of time because in 630 AD it was converted into a church dedicated to St. Adrian. The white marble arch you can see was dedicated to Septimius Severus and his two sons in 203 AD to commemorate the Parthian victories. The three columns ahead is all that remains of the temple of Vespasian and Titus, whilst opposite is the ruins of the temple of Saturn. We are now at the house of the Vestal Virgins. The Vestal Virgins were 6 priestesses in ancient Rome who served the goddess of the hearth, Vesta. Girls were chosen by the chief priest between the ages of 6 and 10. They served for 30 years, 10 years training, 10 years performing sacred duties and 10 years training novices. They had to ensure the sacred fire in the temple of Vesta never went out. If it did, it was considered a divine catastrophe and were whipped as punishment. The Vestals were required to take a vow of strict celibacy for their 30-year term. If a Vestal broke their vow, they would be buried alive in a sealed underground chamber, as it was taboo to spill a Vestal's blood, whilst their male lovers were flogged to death. As the weather gods were not playing ball today, we never got to fully explore and see all that we wanted to at the Roman Forum. But this just means the action of tossing a single coin into the Trevi fountain may just come true.